Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. And as always, we're your hosts. I'm Will. That's Blake. Today we're here to talk some Critical Role, some very intriguing Critical Role, episode 63.
A big episode.
Indeed.
Big episode. I was very disappointed to finish it and then look at my calendar and be like, there's probably no Critical Role this next week.
I know.
And I was kind of like, no. And then sure enough, there's not a follow-up until next week. But
that's right. We do have Candela Obscura, so at least we have something to tide us over in this upcoming off week. But yeah, we gotta wait. And it seems like, I don't think this is crazy to say. In fact, I think it's rather obvious. But next episode of Critical Role is going to be the reunion.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You know, and on top of this just being a really big episode, it's really big cliffhanger, I guess.
Back together.
Yeah. So it's been like 4 months.
Mid-months for sure. Yeah.
Since the crew. Yeah. So it'll be good to have everyone back together. So we just have to wait a little bit longer during this off week. But yeah. Announcements. I don't think we really have any out of the ordinary announcements. Just our typical check out our other stuff we're putting out there. The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild one. We recently finished our Ravening War discussion. So if you haven't checked that out yet, give that a glance. Great series. I know Blake and I both enjoyed that. Dimension 20's new series, I believe, starts tonight. So for those of you guys that are going to be checking that out, let us know in the comments.
What's it called?
I think it's Dungeons and Drag Queens. Did you see the little
no
promotion? Brennan is like all decked out.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I don't think it's again, y'all Dimension 20 folks, forgive me for not knowing the lingo yet, but it's not like a main.
It's like campaign. A
Side quest. Thank you. Because I think it's only 4 episodes.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I believe that starts tonight. And then am I forgetting anything?
Diablo 4. We're going to talk about it still.
Is this going to be the next Witcher?
I know. I was already thinking that, man. We did just put out some quick summary of the patch notes that just came out. They did just have a big patch. So if you're playing Diablo 4, you can check out that video or just jump into the game because there's some really cool changes. So
yeah, season 1 coming soon.
Yeah.
And also, I always forget to mention this at the start, so I am going to mention it now. We've got a Discord. It'll be linked in the description box below. Like we said, there's no official Critical Role episode, but there is a Candela Obscura. So for that, and also in perpetuity for Critical Role episodes, we have a live chat while those are going on. So come join us, other members of the community. It's much less toxic than Twitch chat. So it's a good place to be. We got all good people that come through. One of my favorite parts of the week is watching those episodes with you guys. So join us if you're not a toxic jerk.
Yeah.
And then also, you may have noticed on the channel, we've been pumping out some kind of newish content for us. Is we've been highlighting some of our favorite Critical Role moments, releasing some highlight videos, some shorts. So hopefully you guys have been enjoying those. And if you have been, and there are specific moments you'd like to see, let us know in the comments. Maybe we can get that up on our to-do list.
I'm super jealous of you because like my Rolodex of moments goes back to the start of campaign 3.
Oh yeah.
And Calamity, basically. So I'm just like, I'm so curious the other big moments from the other 2 campaigns.
Yeah, but I don't know if I want you to like, if I did like rip like a really cool moment from campaign 1, I wouldn't want you to watch it.
You know me. I'll shamelessly watch it.
Oh no. Okay, well, now I gotta be careful.
Anyway. All right, well, let's jump into our discussion of episode 63 of campaign 3. If you're just joining us for the first time, we like to cut out a little bit of a recap and chat about really what happened in the episode, since it's a bit of a longer, these episodes are a bit longer. And like I mentioned, we cut that out, we post it on YouTube separately, and then we follow that up with our full episode discussion. So if you're watching just the recap, click the link in the description box and you can get our full discussion. And also importantly, we'd love to know your thoughts on the episode as well. So feel free to jump into that conversation, whether you're a new critter or a longer watching critter. But having said that, episode 63, the haunted, a haunted whisper,
A haunted
haunt,
past.
haunted past. I got one of the words. A haunted past. This episode opens up with the party in this large room with this green obelisk. And as we saw in the previous episode, this smiling face. This face is actually going to drop down into this creature of shadow is really the best way to describe it. Someone does some kind of, I think maybe an arcana check or something of that nature, and they realize this is some fey type creature. But it is essentially a creature made of pure shadow and I'll call it necrotic ichorness. And the creature is very much everyone's kind of like, hey, so what's going on? What you doing here? And most importantly, where is everyone else? And this creature basically informs them that they are all now one with it in a very ominous way, which the party's like, don't know if I like that. The creature also identifies itself as, it's so hard to pronounce, Evitharir?
Yeah, I think.
Erythafir? I think it's
Evithorier.
I think it's Evitharir.
Yeah.
I'm sticking with it. And is very much signaling that it's about to consume them as well. Before I think it's Ladna who has a persuasion check that is basically like, or actually maybe it was Denise, who's like, hey, we don't need to fight. We can just kind of talk about this. Unfortunately, the roll is not quite high enough and combat ensues. Now, what we typically do with combat and critical role is we just cover the highlights of the combat just because a lot does happen in a typical combat. Essentially, there's going to be a couple of mechanics that are most important in this combat session, one of which is I'm just going to refer to Evitharir as the Taker, which is the title given in the back half to this creature. But the Taker is going to have these dark red crystals of spheres of crystal that are in the room, and the party's not sure what they do and what the interaction is. They just know enough to know that's bad and I want to destroy that. In fact, Ashton is going to spend one of his turns raging and basically smashing this thing to a pile of shards. We do find out later in the combat that the Taker is not only able to take these shards and consume them to restore its life force, but also it's able to then take those consumed shards and create new spheres that are around the room. Some other things that it does that are important for this combat, one of which is that we're going to see some of our first cast. I think that wasn't just in this episode. I think it's in previous episodes, but similar to the Ravening War, we're going to start seeing silvery barbs come out. And we're also going to see counter spells coming out. In fact, there's going to be a round where Evitharir he's going to start casting Fireball on the group, to which people are like, that's probably not a good thing. Laudna is going to counterspell it. Evitharir is going to counterspell the counterspell, and then Prism is going to counterspell his counterspell, so that I feel like I'm playing Magic the Gathering with like the stack of actions that happen. But essentially, the Fireball does not go off and the party is okay. Also, what happens is on Prism's turn, she's going to cast Chromatic Orb and she's going to do force damage on Evitharir. And when this happens, as Evitharir is hit and takes damage, they spot what appears to be some kind of creature within Evitharir. Not like an evil, nefarious creature, but what appears to be some kind of captive figure inside of it. And so they realize right off the bat, this is something we probably need to try to save this person. Combat continues. Laudna is going to be casting Eldritch Blast, which
That
does
much enough.
force damage. And in one particular round, a combination of her casting Eldritch Blast and then Aurum, who is just the Bis describer as the fighter, is going to use Seedling to basically whip out, grab this figure, and with a contested strength check, pulls this character out of the body of the taker, and it reveals this person to be an older elvish man who is unconscious. Immediately after that, going back to Prism's turn, she has sort of like a life crisis on, do I dimension door this person away? Like, is Evetharir going to be wanting to reconsume this person? Or should I do something else? She finally decides, I'm going to dimension door this character away, who's revealed to be Hephaesto, the Hierophant that they were coming to find, and dimension doors him over to Ashton, who's on the other side of the arena, and who immediately is like, "Why? Who is this? What do you want me to do with this person?" In typical Ashton fashion. Denise is going to grab a health potion and give it to Hevestro, who's going to pop up and be kind of like, "What is going on? What's happening?" Evetharir is immediately going to want to try to reconsume this character, and in being frustrated by the counterspell, which actually happens around this time, goes 60 feet from the group and then casts another fireball on the group, which at this point, the group's kind of all huddled in one spot because they're kind of trying to protect Hephaesto. In fact, Aurum has done his, I can't think of what it's called, his bait and switch maneuver, where he's sort of guarding over Hephaesto. Well, the fireball's going to hit. They get rocked for damage, and Hephaesto actually immediately goes unconscious again. Fortunately, Evetharir is looking pretty rough. Laudna is going to do double Eldritch Blasts, and Matt describes Evetharir as sort of becoming unhinged and undone as a shadowy figure. And so she quickens spells, bonus action, Eldritch Blast again, gets the how do you want to do this, and describes this really cool ending combat action of essentially Evetharir sort of like disintegrating until finally he is this one tiny globule of black ichor, to which Laudna explains that she sort of reaches out and grabs it, and I think even says like consumes its essence or something to that effect. Very cool regardless.
Yeah.
So the party immediately, they turn to Hevestro, who they bring back up, and Hevestro is like, essentially like, yeah, my job as the Hierophant has been to protect this spot of an ancient Galdrashari by the name of Omadua, and explains that back in the day, the archdruids would bind themselves with, was it a primordial, I think?
Yes, it was
Or
something.
I think he used the word eidolon, but we'll have to talk
Mhm.
about where we think in the ranking this would be. But basically binds with an eidolon, and on the night of the solstice, as we saw happen elsewhere in Exandria, certain enchantments seem to fail, and Evetharir was released and basically came here to get revenge and consume the people guarding this ritual site. We do find out later, and I won't steal this from you, Will, that what happens to some of Hevestro's aides, but Hevestro himself was basically consumed and had been in the darkness of this figure until the party arrived and freed them. There's also another detail given about Hevestro basically describes a nearby town, because when he says Galdrashari, Ashton, which is, we've seen this happen elsewhere, Ashton hears Ashari and thinks it's his Shari. So he's like, did you say his Shari? And he's like, oh no, definitely not Ashari. And he's like, well, what's wrong with his Shari? And he basically tells the story of a town 50 or 60 years ago where this charismatic leader basically created a cult around bringing back the primordial titans, which Hephaesto describes as being a foolhardy task, that it's impossible, that the guards had scattered them entirely. But despite this character, Efterin, as this cult leader had, in his process of trying to bring back the primordials, had brought in essentially terrible carnage on the village of Tumillo. And those characters had been scattered. We also know that Elder Abadina was one of his followers. And after the chaos of this, she basically went to Hevestro, who mentored her and sort of brought her back from the cult world, I guess. um, After this, Hevestro's kind of like, so what exactly has been going on since the solstice hit? And Laudna basically casts Silent Image and shows kind of the events with Ruidus and specifically the excavation site. So I feel like that was a really long first half for me. And I still don't know if I had every important detail, but do you want to take the break on?
Yeah,
Because
of
nothing
course.
important happens after this point.
Right. I was gonna say, yeah, my half feels long too. So y'all, thanks
Yeah.
for bearing with us here. Also, real quick, um, I made a really bad pun joke in Discord during this episode, and the crew voted that my punishment was that I had to make it again in the recap, but it actually
Oh,
happened
no.
during your half. So let me just pay up here. The moment that you referred to with Aurum doing his bait and switch maneuver,
Yeah.
he was like impaled on part of something right before that.
The
So
shadow spike, I think.
yeah, so I said Aurum got himself off and then performed a master bait and switch. So yeah,
Nice.
sorry, and moving on. So we pick back up in the second half with Hevestro having been kind of caught up to speed on everything that's happened the past few days. And he's like, okay, well, what can I do for you? What did you come to me for? And they tell him that they seek transportation to various places amongst the group. And he's like, yeah, I would be happy to help, but I'm going to need the day to recover so I can send you in the morning. Um, Prism then quickly asks him about the Githzerai because of that skull that they had found the day before, or I guess it was today. And he says he's heard of them but has never encountered one. They are from the Astral Sea. Hevestro then goes to kind of deal with the aftermath of this attack that has happened at his shrine to go deal with all of the remains of his friends that have all been killed here. And he actually like pulls some skeletons out of the ground and is basically going to go bury his friends and just take care of the funeral rites of all of these people. So he's leaving to do that, and he tells the party like, make yourself at home, essentially. So our crew is beginning to wind down, and they're going to go, I think, hang out around the fire pit. But as this is happening, Denise tells Bordor that she found his slingshot. Now, if you'll recall, this is something she actually sleight of handed away from him earlier. So she's like, "Hey, I found your slingshot. Like, here you go." And as he reaches for it, she grabs his arm and pins it behind his back, and basically has him like locked up. And he's trying to break free, but he can't. And she says, yeah, I'm uncomfortable like sleeping in the same place with you because like you're clearly hiding something. um and so there's this kind of tense moment that unfolds, and they're like, we know you're lying about something. And so Bordor admits like, yeah, okay, I wasn't looking for my brother, like I was just trying to endear myself to you guys. um and they're like, what? So like, what about those places we scried on? And he's like, yeah, I didn't recognize any of those places, and I'm not a sheep herder either. And he says he's a leather worker. And they're like, well, why would you lie about this? And I believe it's Laudna, but I can't remember exactly. Makes a comment on how his healing magic felt like it had a bit of divine to
Mhm.
it, as if he
Yeah.
was a divine sorcerer. And so they want to know what's going on. So Denise actually does let him go, and Bordor begins to kind of tell his story. He grew up on the Menagerie Coast, and he says his mother's name was Lavandra, and she was blessed by the Wild Mother, and so is Bordor. That's the divine source of his powers. So only his mother and him were blessed with this. His father and his other brother were not. So he says his mother taught him the ways in secret, and they stayed away from the people of the city, just trying to keep to themselves under the guise of simple leather workers. However, one day these rich kids picked a fight with Bordor, and he couldn't control his powers, and so he almost killed one of them. But it was an accident. His mother took the fall for him, as she didn't want Bordor to get in any trouble, and she just said, as long as we have faith, we'll be taken care of, and not to worry. Bordor's father and his brother, however, weren't about to just take this lying down, and so they went up in arms to fight for the mother's freedom. But they didn't stand a chance against all of these guards, and they were ultimately killed. And Bordor says that his mother's faith was shattered in that moment when her husband and son died, and that the gods had let her down. So she handed Bordor her dagger and told him to just run as fast as he could. And the last thing Bordor saw over his shoulder was his mother setting off a vitriolic spear on herself and all of these swarming guards as a big, just kind of sacrifice play. It's been a number of years since then, and Bordor fled to the Sirios Mountains where he stole, tricked, and scrounged wherever he could, to the point where he developed a reputation that caught the eye of powerful people, people that approached him and asked him if he believed in the gods, if what he thought they did were good. And, clearly Bordor did not. So he found a community with these people. And as Bordor is telling this, he has slipped one of these residuum esque amplifying crystals onto the ground, and he lets loose a vitriolic sphere into it. And he describes like dropping his goofy personality. He's still the same person, so he didn't like drop a disguise, but his appearance changes.
Yeah.
You could say you can see like the cracks in the veneer, the weathered man underneath, and he like stands to his full height, straight posture, and unleashes the spell on everyone. Um, it does acid damage. A couple people save from it, but Prism immediately falls unconscious. And Bordor screams, "I saw you. You killed my friends in Marquette." And we roll initiative. Um, so Bordor is just trying to run. He knows he stands no chance against all of these people. So he tries to run. Orem immediately grabs Prism, gives her a potion, and then baits and switches with her to pump up her AC. Ashton goes into a rage and rocks Bordor.
Yeah,
Actually,
that's the best way to put it.
yeah, knocks him prone and does some substantial damage. Denise then uses her whip and is ultimately able to successfully restrain him with it. So Bordor knows he's in a tough spot, and he tries to polymorph into a hummingbird to escape, but Laudna counterspells it.
Mhm.
And Bordor just says, beautiful. And he basically just starts saying, just end it, get it over with, and is begging them to just take his life. Um, Very tense moment, a very crazy moment. And Laudna walks up to him and describes her form of dread kind of like coming out as she does. And her eyes go dark, but there's like a faint purple energy to them. And she says, "I'm really sorry, Bordor. I just can't stand having anyone else betray me." And Marisha describes Laudna grabbing him by the throat and casting Hunger of the Shadow, dealing 26 necrotic damage and instantly knocking him unconscious. And Laudna is like delighting in this moment, and in the back of her mind, she can hear a heartbeat kind of pop up. Denise is like, "Hey, we should not kill him. Let's interrogate him so we can learn more about lewdness and everything going on." Meanwhile, Prism, who has been brought back to consciousness thanks to the potion, takes another pulse of damage from the acid damage that Bordor had hit her with. And because of this, she is just feeling like so betrayed in this moment. And she just runs up and punches Bordor as hard as she can, which, because he's unconscious, causes two death fails immediately. Laudna still clutching his throat and is like kind of like sucking the life essence into herself. Um, is just kind of like embracing this moment. She's barely like present, but she's just like having flashes of all of her past trauma that she's experienced and all the times that she hasn't been in control. But she's in control now. And so she kind of gives into it and casts Wither and Bloom, which sucks out the remaining life. And she can kind of feel something dormant within her come back to life, and this purple flame like starts cascading down her arm like into the place where Bordor was, as he basically is just reduced to ash. And the same purple flame that last time we saw was with Delilah. So this is all
Thanks.
going down. Yeah. Ashton approaches Laudna and is like, "Are you okay?" And she like immediately like kind of lashes out. And Ashton's
Yeah.
like, "It's fine. It's fine." And Laudna is just crying. And Ashton kind of comforts her and leads her away. Um, Orem takes out this locket that he's been carrying
Yeah.
since the Malleus key in Marquette. He took a locket off of one of the soldiers as a reminder, and he just throws it down and says, "We're at war." and he walks off.
Yeah.
Denise then kind of loots Bordor's corpse, basically, getting a number of items. We get a dagger, a crossbow, a cloak of protection, a hat of disguise, and an immovable rod. So he was packed to the gills here.
Yeah.
She then kind of sweeps up what's left of him, which isn't much, and kind of buries him sort of like under a couple of rocks, before she goes and talks to Prism, who is just again feeling so betrayed. Like she's had this journey where she feel like she's really been coming into herself, and now she kind of thinks it was all a lie.
Yeah.
Um, Denise comforts her, and it's around this time that Hevestro makes his way back in. I think of like the Donald Glover holding the pizzas.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And he's like, "Well, I don't want to pry, but I'm sorry for whatever happened here." And he's like, "Tomorrow I'll help send you on your way." And he retires to his chambers. We have a couple of conversations before the night ends. First, Prism and Laudna have a conversation where they're just talking about their betrayal, and Laudna is worried that she hurt not only Bordor, but she may have hurt her friends by giving in. And Laudna basically then tells Prism about Delilah and about everything that had happened with her. And Prism says, if you beat Delilah once, you can do it again. And Orem, meanwhile, is kind of off to himself. He can still hear all these conversations happening, but he's off to himself thinking about just the complexities of the situation and all of this conflict. But really, all he can focus on is that the people that he's lost because of the people that are doing this, and he says that he's focused, or he doesn't say out loud, but his internal monologue is that he is focused on just trying to kill the people that did this to him, the people who took lives just to get what they wanted. And he says he will die trying if he has to. Everyone eventually finds their night's rest. The next morning comes, and it's time to teleport out of here. But before that happens, a couple more conversations occur. Prism decides that, you know what? I don't want to go back to the Cobalt Soul immediately. Like, what if I kind of did my own thing for a while? And she's kind of having this conversation with Ashton, and Ashton's like, yeah, like, do it. Like, just be a criminal nerd. You'll figure it out. And Ashton actually suggests Whitestone as a place she could maybe go. They have a lot of books there, and he also says, yeah, piss off the leader there. He's a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Denise suggests she goes to Kymel, which is a crazy place, and Prism's like, oh yeah, okay, I don't know where I should go. But Denise is gonna go see Dariax for sure. So she asks Prism to scry on him so she can figure out exactly where that is. She does just that, and they do see Dariax alone in a tavern, which they come to realize is in Westrin. So she decides that that's where she'll go. Um, because of this, Orem's like, oh yeah, let me try the Sending Stone to see if I can talk to Dorian and potentially the Crown Keepers. He tries, but unfortunately, it's all staticked out and still doesn't work. Um, Denise then distributes Bordor's items, with most of them going to our crew, but the Hat of Disguise Prism actually takes. And she says, I really don't know where I want to go. And Orem's like, well, or wait, excuse me. She's like, I really don't know where I want to go. Maybe I'll just let Hevestro pick for me. Um, so they go to this secret glade, basically, where Hevestro is going to cast transport via plants. They arrive, and Denise is going to go first. So she says her goodbyes, and he opens up a portal, and she steps through to Westrin. Prism then scries on Imogen and sees that the other half of the group is in Drusar. And Hevestro then opens another portal to Marquette, and Prism rushes through first. And then everyone else does, because that's where they're going. Prism didn't realize that she was just jumping into a portal that was going to be where everyone else was going. So she's like, oh, well, guess I'm coming with y'all, which more on that in the discussion. But so the whole crew walks through the portal, and that's essentially where the episode ends.
Man.
Once again, that was episode 63, Haunted Life? Haunted Past? One of
Look at
those
us.
two.
Yeah.
If you're just watching the recap, we'll have a link to our full discussion in the description below, so be sure to check it out. All right, man.
Whoo, man. What
Big one.
a episode, man. This might be like one of our discussions. I mean, goodness, there was so much. And what a crazy episode too.
Yeah.
Um I mean, I guess it makes sense to start with the big bombshell.
Freaking Bordor.
Freaking Bordor, man. R.I.P.
Oh man, we've been. I mean, if you guys have been watching us, we've been talking about Bordor almost every episode about what the heck's going on with them.
Yeah, what's the deal with Bordor? What's going on?
Rest in peace to the dog theory. You
Yep.
know, unfortunately. Uh, but yeah, he was a spy. I mean, I guess I don't know if spy is necessarily
Spies.
applicable because it's not like he was
Yeah,
sent there, but he was a bad guy. Um,
and
essentially.
presumably from the fortress in or wait, no. When he said in Marquette, I was thinking all the way back to Bosseros, and I was like, what? But he's from the excavation site,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
At the Malleus Key is how I understood it.
Yeah, that
Um,
makes more sense.
so yeah, he seemingly just got teleported just like Team AOL did from that very spot, which I don't want to get. Well, I guess it's fine to go ahead and say it, which I thought was interesting because that explains why, but then it makes Denise's appearance there a little more interesting. Which I think, at the end of the day, you have these guest characters, you need a reason for them to all come together. So I'm not saying there's anything else there, but it is interesting that
Yeah.
um, everyone except her, well, I guess Prism too, so never mind, but
Yeah.
teleported from
Right.
the same place. But yeah, so Bordor was potentially a member of the Ruby Vanguard, not necessarily. Potentially a member of what is the other group called? Odohan's group?
Oh, I think I don't remember, but he's Ruby Vanguard because I think he even said it himself that he was Ruby Vanguard.
Okay. Paragon's
Um,
Call. But yeah,
yes. Right.
yeah, so pretty tragic backstory, and I mean there's a lot of like aspects to talk about here, but I mean first and foremost, Utkarsh, what a great job, man, of just
Yeah.
keeping
He's
everyone on
fun.
their toes for the past 6 weeks or however long it's been, and coming out with a really cool reveal.
And coincidentally enough, even when he was having to do, I think like his spell DC or something, he was like, "So where is this on here?" So stayed true to. I don't think that was an act. I think he
Yeah,
genuinely wasn't sure, but it just worked coincidentally with the persona he was
yeah,
creating. So it kind of went well together in tandem. I'm sad they killed him. I understand, but I'm sad I was feeling from Denise. I was like, oh, don't kill him. And he died I just felt bad for him. So
yeah. I mean, he wasn't really a. I mean, he did say that he was going to try to kill them. I think.
yeah,
So I mean that hadn't happened yet, but he I guess those were his intentions still though. But like that aside, he wasn't really that bad of a guy. He just kind of it was a product of his circumstances. Um alone in the world and kind of found by these people who had a mutual distaste for the gods, and so he was like, yeah, you know.
yeah. And I want to table that to come back to that about this conversation about the gods in general. But going back to him, there were some big moments for our characters too, because we had Laudna, um, we had Ashton coming to Laudna's aid, which I think someone in a previous episode commented that they were shipping Ashton and Laudna, um,
Well,
which I'm
you
not.
you were as well, right?
I didn't comment it. Oh, I said I could see it for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I could totally see it. But point being, for me, they just have such a special connection.
yeah,
So it was great to see him come up. But freaking Orem, man, the moment where she looks back at him and I mean, Dad Orem just nods
yeah,
in a very like do it way. I mean, and then throwing the locket down. I mean, I'm really curious what is going on in his character's mind and what this means for Orem, this character who has always been sort of a bastion for good. We've seen it in EXU, and then now, you know, very straight and narrow. And not that this communicates anything different, but it did feel like a big development point for him.
Yeah, I this whole arc, I feel like he's been now there's been some exceptions. I'm not saying it was all this, but like this over through this arc, he's seemingly gotten like disillusioned and he's I said it in the recap, but his motivation right now is like revenge. He wants to kill the people that took his family away, which is I mean, I don't think it might be fair to say that he always wanted that because I mean we don't really know. We know he was always looking for more information about that attack and what happened. But this is at least the first time he's been like so like just put the cards on the table. Like it's not about saving the world, it's about revenge for him.
I think where my mind goes is early campaign 3, it was all about justice, and
Yeah,
especially lately, it's been about revenge.
yeah,
And I think the outcomes for both of those, like the actions are this can be the same. Like Ludinus can be killed in either one of those situations, but like the motive is very different.
yes,
Sweet dad Orum, this character of justice, and now very much seeming like you said, it's not about the world anymore. Like I want these people to pay. Like we're at war. And kind of realizing that if the ends justify the means, like I think previous Aurum was like the means matter. And this version
yeah.
of Aurum is now like, yeah, we're going to get our hands dirty because that's what it's going to take. So,
Yeah, I think either in EXU or in this campaign, he explicitly says the means matter. Maybe not those words, but like that is brought up. I'm pretty sure. Um, I don't know if this is what I'm talking about necessarily, but I remember specifically in EXU, like the first episode when they were trying to decide what they were going to do, and they were like, "Yeah, let's go rob that ship because the gang wants
yeah.
us to do that." And Orm was like, "What?" like, I like,
Yeah.
and it's just like, I guess I'll go along, but like he's definitely not cool with it.
It was very like peer pressury conversation. We're like, yeah, we're all good. No one has any reservations, right? And
Yeah.
explicitly says in EXU, he says, actually, yeah, I do have a reservation with that. Similar conversation, by the way, happens with the Dawnfather Temple a few episodes ago on raiding the temple or robbing the temple, and him being like, "Yeah, no, I'm a little bit of a more dark line for me, or black
Yeah.
and white line for me." So
But yeah, his arc has been fascinating to me, and I'm real interested to see kind of where it continues from here. Because the whole Laudna thing and him throwing down that medallion felt like almost a tipping point, even like of you know it's we're at war, which it made me wonder. Like he is a warrior. We know he's a like an elite guard. I'm trying to think of I don't know if he would have actually ever like been to war given the timeline and stuff, but I'm curious about like what maybe he's done or has seen in his past. Like maybe this I'm not saying he's always felt this way under the surface, but I'm curious if like there's a war mode, if you will, that he has been to before, like when he's needed to like get the job done, as it were.
yeah,
Or if this is a novel thing, if this is a new kind of it sounds so dumb saying war mode, but I don't I don't know how else to put it. But
no,
if
I get
that's a
it.
new thing for him,
Yeah, yeah, and I wonder, just rejoining the group, if people are going to notice, like, Orm's a little more cynical,
yeah,
which could turn the party into full chaos mode, because Orm's kind of been, let's bring us all back, guys. I think that about that moment, maybe like episode 15, 20, 25, where like everyone was kind of like having like and maybe it was right after FCG like was seeing red, and Orm was like, all right, everyone's kind of like had a moment of losing it, like lock this thing down. Um, so I'm very curious, like if there's going to be any kind of like notable party dynamic differences where people are like, yeah, you seem like you've been through some stuff, Orm, or or even like, well, no, that wouldn't happen. But anywho, I'm kind of just rambling now. But
yeah. No, I feel like there definitely will be a shift in the dynamic, and I feel like there's kind of this cool mirroring effect of kind of Orum's disillusionment compared to Imogen, kind of what happened to her during their arc. She was the wild card, as it so to say, in terms of Orem and Fern even having like a contingency plan for her. I feel like through the course of what happened in their arc, she kind of was more solidified in that we need to stop this from happening. So I'm not saying it's like a yin and yang and an exact opposite thing. I just think in the direction of where their characters moved, it was like opposite directions. So like Imogen is now kind of more like Orem, and Orem is more like how Imogen was. Um,
Yeah, I would agree and also disagree in the sense of I think the thing that's still, I'm glad you brought this up. The thing that's still a bit gray to me is Imogen's mother.
yeah,
In that previously I would have seen Orem like, yeah, she's your mom. Like, let's stop lewdness. And if we can bring her back, I'm all for that. This version of Orem, I could totally see being like, hey, she's with the baddies. Like it just is what like, I'm sorry, but this is what has to be done.
yeah,
Um,
I could
which
see
is
that being a pain point.
which is very interesting to me with him and Imogen.
Yeah, yeah, I could totally see that. That would be really compelling too. Um, so yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's sad, man. You know, our dad of the group has kind of lost his way. I mean, not understandably, um, but yeah. And I kind of felt some like dad energy from Ashton as well,
Oh
kind
yeah.
of like filling that void. Um, but actually, I we kind of got sidetracked. I want to go back to Bordor. Okay, where to start though? Really, I think so. Beyond the meta stuff, which we already kind of talked about with how Utkarsh played it, which was awesome. I've been actually rewatching these episodes to for some prep on some videos we want to make, and it's been fun seeing him kind of navigate some of these moments now with knowing what we know. Um, but here's what I wanted to ask you: we know that he did say like, "Oh, I was planning on." Well, one he said running away, and then I think another point when they were all teleporting, he was like, "My plan was going to be to like kill you when we were teleporting," or something to that effect. Um, so even though he did say that, I was wondering if there wasn't like a path of redemption there. Not that he was going to like join them and completely change his mindset, but by redemption I mean just decide ultimately not to kill them and to maybe just go their own separate ways. Um, and like what could have happened if Laudna didn't kill him? You know, like, and I don't want to spoil anything, but there's like specifically some moments in previous campaigns where NPCs that let's just call them enemies became friends. Um,
Who saw it with you?
well, they weren't really friends,
Well, I mean, I think they were as much. I mean, she was feigning friendship just like Bordor was.
right?
You know?
Right, but they didn't like then become actual friends.
Right. Okay. I see what you're
Yeah,
saying. Yeah.
like was
Okay.
there some path there where like let's talk it out,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
I think
like
I think Denise wanted to, right? I
yeah,
mean, Denise is like, hey guys, like, can we? I'm very much seeing Denise like in a very Job manner of like, okay, I've made a huge mistake. I did not mean for it to be, she was like, I just want to know what's going on, you
yeah,
know? Um, yeah, I was totally thinking that too. I mean, I think that makes what's so sad to me about Border, like when he drops his disguise and he describes himself as being like this visually traumatized character who's kind of been through it and then turning into like a pile of tears asking Lana just to finish it. I mean, it's very sad. I definitely relate with what you're saying, and that I wonder if the party could there have been an opportunity to have been like, yeah, I mean, which I mean, Utkarsh said it himself after the fact, like, oh, I was gonna kill you, like no
yeah,
matter what, I was gonna kill you. But I also wonder, teeny tiny bit, maybe not. But
yeah. And I mean, obviously, this was the last episode of this arc, so I mean, this is another subject for a little bit later, but like, seems like Emily Axford might be coming back next episode. Like,
I'm all for it, dude.
you
Come
know,
on,
so
come on,
so I mean,
join permanently, Emily. I'm all for it.
she was amazing.
She's my favorite.
She was great. Lived up to the hype for sure.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, just a tragic character, I guess, is what I'm
yeah.
getting at here at the end. And so it's he didn't. I mean, he deserved it, sort of, not like in necessarily the way that it played out, but like he was a bad guy, let's say, an enemy rather.
I mean,
Um,
it's sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm just kind of rambling, but I don't know. Bottom
It,
line, tragic.
yeah, I mean, it's always sad when you see an evil character where you can trace the path to them becoming evil.
Right.
I mean, this person was out on their own, had to steal to survive, and eventually caught the eye of the Ruby Vanguard or Paragon's Call. And yeah, I totally get it. And in the moment where they needed it most, the gods didn't help. Um, I think I don't think Matt's done a bad job. I think the whole back and forth on should we help the gods or not has been a pretty fair back and forth. I thought this episode really characterized or brought to life the Ruby Vanguard a lot more for me because I envisioned it being comprised of many Bordors who all have similar stories.
Right.
And I've said this several times. The gods are kind of like the Greek gods in that they really kind of suck, man. And I haven't seen any of campaign 1 and campaign 2, so you might have to help me, but I honestly, like, these gods for Exandria, I've really seen very little that they've done that's redeemable, helpful for people. I mean,
Well, there is like a larger conversation there because, and I think Orem even mentions it, not in this episode, but when he and Bordor are talking in the tree, and Bordor's like, "Do you believe in the gods?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've like seen what they've done. Like, they've done many like good things in the world." And they have, and there's also this some of them. Let's be clear. There's obviously we got betrayers, we got prime deities, and the prime deities may not even be so virtuous necessarily, but they have done stuff that ultimately was good for humanity, whether that was their intentions or not.
like what?
Well, like they've bestowed their power upon champions to, uh, fight evil, as it were. Because another thing to add to this conversation is that the divine gate exists. So it's not as if the gods can just come down and like do
Sure.
stuff. Like the only really way they have to interface with the world is through mortals.
Mhm.
And then we're getting into a conversation of like, well, it's a game and there's like mechanics to the game. So like, what kind of story would it be if the Wild Mother just came down and killed Ludinus before he activated the Malleus key? You know what I'm saying? So like, you kind of have to operate within all of those boundaries. So I
Yeah.
think that there is an argument on both sides, 100%. And the gods, there's definitely reasons to just say, let's do out with them and get some new folks in charge. But they have done good stuff too. So.
Mm, mm. Mm.
uh
No.
you know
Just quick point of order, by the way, totally unrelated. Vecna sealed behind the divine gate. Um, what's his classification? Is is
he's
he
a
considered just a deity, just a general deity?
um we actually were talking about this in the Discord a little bit. Yeah, he is. So spoilers, campaign 1. Not we're not going to go into details, but warning. He is a god. So he performed the ritual and ascended to godhood. um
I guess my
we
follow-up question. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it was separate. It was different than the way the matron did it, because the matron like usurped the
Mhm.
previous god of death and took their place. Vecna like created a new feign of godhood.
Nice
So he
word.
didn't like actively like replace another god.
Mhm.
What were you gonna say?
So classifications, prime deities, betrayers. Vecna is somewhere just like a general, like middle
Yeah, I
manager.
guess he wouldn't fall into
Maybe?
either of those because that like classification came before he was a god.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I would assume betrayers though. Like if he was gonna pick a squad,
Yeah.
it would absolutely be the betrayers. The prime deities actively fought against him.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious.
yeah.
Okay.
So uh, I forgot what we were talking about.
Just relating on the whole Thanos did nothing wrong of the whole thing, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to be like team gods. They're the best. Keep them in power. I'm just saying it isn't as one sided. Like they have done good works as well. Some of them. Um, which we had a couple of moments. Or was it this? It might actually it wasn't this episode. I don't think, but where Orem has the moment where he prays to the Wild Mother. So he's at least not like fully.
Yeah,
like
right.
off the grid murder status. Like he still does, is trying to build that connection. He just, wants his revenge, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm trying to think before I get sidetracked again if there was something else on Border I wanted to talk about. I feel like there was, but I can't remember. I guess not about him, but about that moment, kind of shifting to Laudna and what happened with her there. Um, crazy moment, big build up to this of kind of Delilah's still around, what's going on there, and I really liked this, and I love how Marisha even like literally called attention to it about being like I don't want to do this, like I don't want to do this, but she knew that like the character moment like that would happen. Um, and I saw some really interesting parallels with her doing that, and even that spell, the Hunger of the Shadow or whatever. The only other time she's cast that was against F.C.G. when F.C.G. betrayed them and went berserk. Um, and so I thought that was a really cool like narrative parallel to where like a betrayal again has invoked that out of her, and that is what has kind of like brought Delilah back to life. I even went and looked it up when she cast it the first time on F.C.G. Matt also described like this heartbeat, this warmth kind of returning to her. So I thought it was, really cool that
Mm.
once again the heartbeat, which makes me wonder. Like I think that's a homebrew spell that
It is,
Matt
yeah.
came
I
up
looked it up.
with.
Yeah, it's homebrewed.
Um, obviously, thematically, narratively, Delilah coming back in this moment is just a thing that happened that I think would almost be fair to say maybe would have happened regardless if she cast Hungering Shadow or whatever. But part of me, since the heartbeat thing was brought up in both instances where she cast it, if there is like a hidden stat here where like if she absorbs X amount of HP or deals X amount of damage, like with this ability, if there's like a full-fledged takeover that happens or something.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory. Um, we know also that she's clearly assigning her spells to her sources of power, in that after Delilah was dealt with, her form of dread was very Sun Tree esque.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a stretch to say that. We'll at least say tree esque.
right.
And as she did this spell with the heartbeat in the back of her mind, sort of signaling Delilah again, we have, the purple in her eyes, we have the purple flame, and presumably has, which we don't know mechanically what happened at the end of when she was brought back, but seemingly Delilah was perhaps sealed away and Laudna opened the door again.
Yeah.
Or we think as much from her conversation with Prism after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I would say that like she's back now. What that means necessarily, I don't know. Again, maybe there is some sort of mechanic to it beyond just narrative, that could be at play here. But yeah, this feels like something that they're gonna have to deal with, in addition to the other 100 things on the list right now. So I'm really interested to see like where this goes, and we've mentioned it before, but like especially if we come to some like major battle conflict, we have so many people in the party that might just lose it. We got FCG, we got Chetney, we got Laudna, all like innate things inside of them that could just go wrong. And then we obviously have Imogen, who might just, because of her mom or whatever, choose something else. And then Orem, being hard pressed on the other side of that, similarly could, I don't know, it's just a big keg, powder keg. That's the word I was looking
Right.
for. Um, but yeah, heartbreaking, tragic for Laudna too, like, and she wanted to do it, she said like that's the only time she's felt control recently. So like, I think she did, like, she wanted that, even though she like didn't on some levels, obviously at the same time, she didn't like want to bring Delilah back, but I'm just curious how she's going to like wrestle with that. And yeah, I don't know. There's just so many, so many tragic character moments in this episode. Um,
Yeah, and very different from Team Wildmount, which kind of
That's what I was just about to say.
ended their arc and like, you know, things are good. Yeah, we're getting back to our friends, and like this group's like very much a bit more traumatized for sure. The only one who I feel like is relatively unscathed is Ashton, who ironically got has every reason to be the most traumatized from the info we got on the F. Terran and the Hishari cults. But
Yeah.
like you pointed out, he kind of stepped into that role of Orem, sort of being the dad and leading her away. But this group, very much of a different outcome compared to the other group.
Yeah, for sure. Like they saw some horrific things in Malaismere. Don't get me wrong, but like they got to meet Santa, basically have a little help Santa's workshop mission. Got to escort the sacred beast out of the city and like be heroes, and then teleport back to Drusar. And this group has just had like trauma after trauma. Um, attacked a temple, got attacked by an ancient like dark fae entity, and Delilah's back, and Orum's losing his religion. So yeah, I totally feel that too. That's why I already mentioned it with Orum and Imogen again, but just Imogen earlier, but just really interested to see the dynamic of the whole group when they come back together.
Mhm.
And curious how Imogen will react to Laudna. I mean, obviously she's going to be there for her, but for Laudna to have kind of gone through that and Imogen not have been there, like I think that's going to really mess her up.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Something else too, from a meta perspective, talking about the two parties. Um, I really enjoyed both stories. Interestingly enough, though, I don't know if it was because it came off of the climax of the Apogee Solstice. Um, but whenever the first party ended, I was like, yeah, I think I'm ready to see what's going on with Team AOL.
mhm.
Um, this one, I was like, wait, it's over? They're
Yeah,
leaving? I
yeah.
was like, wait, what do you mean? It's like, we just got
It
here.
felt way faster.
It felt so fast.
I think it
And
was fewer episodes.
okay, maybe
Was it?
that's why then. I don't know, honestly. I can check. But
I
I
think this
definitely
was
was like,
5.
okay. I was definitely like, I can't believe this is already over.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I think it was 59
Yeah.
to 63 with this group.
Yeah, you're right. This one was only 5. And the previous one was 7, right? 52 to 58? Or is that 8
I was
episodes?
thinking 7, but I was just guessing. So I don't know if that's right or not.
Okay, yeah. So we got 2 more episodes. Well, okay, so I guess that's why it felt shorter then for sure. Which not like it has to be 7 and 7, but
Right, right.
I definitely felt like I can only imagine surely they're going to come back to Silra, right? I mean,
Yeah, I
there's a lot to cover still, especially from I'm just thinking of the 3 things that come to mind. One, which I thought was going to be a central point that wasn't, Ludinus's hometown,
right.
which never got brought up again. Um, to Malo, Efteran's town that
Mhm.
Ashton presumably is from.
Yeah.
Um, and then also the place where Evitharir was originally from.
Mm.
That, and I can't find the description in the notes. But basically he was sealed away in like some place to the west, which I don't know if that would come up again. I don't know if Matt was just saying like, yeah, I was over traveled over here and attacked. But definitely the first two for sure. It feels like we have to go to this town. Feels like we have to go to both towns. But then I'm also like, okay, why would they go back to Silra?
Yeah, I thought I'm basically with you. With I mean, I thought they would go to Lunis's town, but was for sure that we were going to explore Ashton's backstory a bit deeper, and which we got a big lore dump on it. So it's not as if that didn't happen to some extent, but yeah, I expected that to be further explored. Now, maybe that town doesn't exist anymore. You know, like maybe it's one because the ritual was crazy, and so maybe it just literally doesn't exist anymore. But maybe it's like a ghost town, even if it does still exist.
Well, I think they said it was cursed, or
Yeah,
like that area is cursed or something. But we did get confirmation that they were trying to, I think the phrasing was something around like usher in the power of the primordials. Maybe even like a
yeah,
titan was the word that Hevestro used. I can't remember. But it ultimately led to the destruction of the people, but also I guess Ashton's physical transformation as well.
yeah. They were trying to restore the primordial powers of the world, is what I have written down. Um, so yeah, so okay, there's a couple. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the Ivithorir and stuff a little bit too. But then I also kind of on the subject we're on about like we thought they would do these things. Well, I'm curious what they do next. Like, I mean, I guess Imogen can teleport now, which I guess we know that they made it safely to Drusar. We had kind of had that cliffhanger with her rolling that die. Um, so clearly they made it. Maybe that explains why Deanna and Frida are no longer with them. Perhaps maybe they got sidetracked a little bit and then had to go their separate ways or something. But Imogen can teleport. Magic is seemingly at least stable enough to teleport. Um, so I guess they could just come back pretty easily if they needed to. But yeah, that they meet back up. They share the information with each other. I feel like Ludinus's hometown could be like a point of interest that they're maybe like, well, that's something we can go investigate. Could go back to the Malleus Key site. I guess that's obviously a point of interest. So long-winded answer is maybe we'll still see some of this stuff explored. Um, but yeah, I felt similarly.
Yeah. I will say I really enjoyed this group. I thought the table just felt awesome. And I really loved every episode from this arc.
Yeah, it felt. I mean, we just talked about how it was shorter, but it definitely felt shorter. I loved it too. I could definitely have gone some more episodes with them. But we may get Emily again. It seems like that wasn't initially the plan, but then like she teleported with them, and Matt like made the comment of like, Emily, I guess we'll see you next time. So like I don't know how much to read into that, especially
Yeah.
with like busy schedules, and I'm sure like this is more of like a job. So it's not
Yeah.
like she is just free to come back. But I'm curious to see if we might see her
Yeah. And
again.
Amy Carrero was great too.
Of
I
course, yeah.
really enjoyed Denise, and really curious what's going on with Dariax alone in a tavern. I'm like,
Yeah,
very
me
interesting.
too. I wonder like if we see the crown keepers again, um we gonna see Opal? Are we gonna see Denise? Like maybe this is how Dariax gets out of the picture, kind of. And if we do see them again, it's just like Opal and Dorian, and Dariax isn't there, and therefore Denise isn't there either. But yeah, I'm really curious what's going on with them, and like why did Denise get teleported due to her proximity to Dariax when Dariax seemingly did not get teleported? Um, so like
Mhm.
again, maybe that's we had to make it work for these guests to come and play together, and I'm fine if that's the answer.
Hmm.
But that is interesting because like you would think that okay, Denise got teleported, so probably there's a pocket in that part of the world that got,
Yeah.
but clearly Dariax didn't. Um, so yeah, all amazing guests. Um, yeah, I'm gonna miss them, and Christian and Abria as well. Which I guess there's a chance they're there when they come meet up. But I'm leaning towards no on that.
Yeah.
Um, at least the actors, the characters may be there for a little bit. Um,
Do you think coming back to this next episode, you kind of just said it a minute ago of like, what do they do in Dressar? And you mentioned like, yeah, maybe they teleport to Silver and they go check out the town, but it feels like Matt, I would assume, is going to hand them a pretty heavy scent in some way. Because there's still the urgency of Ruidus over the excavation site, I could definitely see the parties being like, "What do we do?" Now
Hmm.
maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe Orm's like, "All right, saddle up. We're going to Marquette. We're going to Marquette. We're going back to the excavation site. Let's go." I don't think I see that happening, but very curious. I'm also very curious if anything's happened on like a macro level in Dressar. Um, I kind of like Dressar kind of being the coming back home spot and
Yeah.
just seeing it progress and develop as time goes on too.
Yeah.
Uh, just like Junket.
Yeah.
So
Well, at the very least, nothing apocalyptic has happened because we saw half of
mhm.
them there in the tavern. But yeah, I'm curious to see the state of affairs there and just more of the state of affairs at various places in general due to what's happening. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we've talked about it, but I'm curious about the state of magic because, like, the sending stones still didn't work. Sending spells, like, 9 times out of 10, didn't work with team, whatever, the first team. My
Walmart.
mind's blanking. But here with this team, Scry always worked and didn't have any interferences. This teleport via plants worked without any interferences. Um,
Well, they're
Imogen's
both
teleport worked.
yeah.
I just
They they both were primordially sourced though, the scry and the teleport via plants. So
that's true.
it could be the divine energy is kind of scuttled, though it doesn't quite explain Prism doing the scry successfully. But
Right.
yeah,
So, and that again, this may just be something that's like serving the narrative where, so I'm not saying there has to be like a concrete explanation for why, this worked and that
right.
didn't, but I am curious about it. Um, and then I just lost my train of thought again. What was I talking about right before that?
You were talking about magic not working. You just said
Okay.
you were just curious because magic wasn't working.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's all I had there. And then, um, oh yeah, like the state of Jusar and the state of things. Does this mean since Imogen at least successfully got the teleport off, we know the transport via plants works, could information be circulating in the world again? Or is it still most people are in the dark? Like, is there potentially a ally gathering information distributing mission that needs to happen? Like, we got to go to Whitestone and tell the Derolos what's going on. We got to go to Vasselheim and make sure they're up to speed.
Right.
And maybe collect allies at the same time for then a final battle at the Malleus Key once again or something. Um, is Keyleth okay? Is Vax, like, are we gonna get like our sending messages working? Can we at least see what's going on there? Like, I'll just circle back to like what are they gonna do now that they've met up? It feels like there's a lot of things that could happen, and it could be something Matt, like you said, gives them like a scent of something to really pursue that we're not considering yet.
It's also crazy to me thinking about the possibility that the campaign is still like only halfway over. Like it feels like so much has happened, especially lately, that I'm kind of like, man, like where does this go if not directly to the Malleus Key again for like a final conflict? It's kind of like in Final Fantasy VII, like where you can go back to the Sephiroth spot. I can't think what the zone's called, but instead you can do all like the side quests and like fight the ultimate weapons and
Yeah.
stuff. It feels like the party could very easily be like, all right, yeah, this is where we should go. I mean, I guess, it could be that this campaign's only 70 episodes or only 80 episodes, which I think would be crazy. And I would be super bummed, but I'm kind of just wondering like, man, where does this go? And um, yeah, where does this go? Which, if Predathos is unleashed and Ludinus is just like the final boss of part one, it does make you wonder like what cosmic battle there could be awaiting us by the end of this campaign.
Yeah. This is something I think we've talked about a couple times throughout the campaign of like, this feels like such a big thing, but we're so early in the campaign. Like, is this the end game? Is there something after? And at this point, I think that like this story is the end game, but I don't think lewdness necessarily is like the final boss type of thing. Nor do I
Mhm.
think necessarily Predatha. Like, I don't think they're gonna like fight Predathos necessarily. Um, so I think this, like I said, this is the end game, but I think that doesn't necessarily mean it's a shorter campaign. Like maybe it is 80 episodes. That would be interesting. But I think there is enough here to get to a campaign 2 length if necessary, because like even if this conflict ends one way or the other, whatever that means, like there's a big battle with Ludinus, Prodathos is either let out or he's not. If he's not, this makes less sense, but if he is, there could still be a lot of like what happens now, like a lot of like we got to handle some things even though this did happen. Because I think that we talked about this last episode, like I think we could be, there could be some space stuff happening. Like maybe we gotta go to Ruidus, and that could be like a whole arc for whatever reason. Like maybe like, okay, he's free and like his spirit is in that city on the moon, and like the only way we can stop it now is if we go there and destroy his heart crystal. Like whatever the case may be. Um,
Yeah. We
there
and we
could
did
be
talk
something
about
like that.
yeah, we did talk about like how that city was very Chekhov's gun Ian in that, they spot this city and like, because surely they're gonna go there at some point, right? And so yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think there is like a space is the place arc to the story, whether that's the epilogue, the ending of it, or some hijinks that they go on later on.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
maybe it's even a lead into to C4. Like maybe we don't actually get Spelljammers in C3, but like that's all kind of, and this is another conversation we've had on the meta level of like, is this a big reset to pave the way for their new system? Which I think it has to be at this point. Like there's no way that they're gonna come out with their own system and then not use it. Right? Like
I,
I
I
mean,
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I think on a meta level, I think there is too much with Wizards of the Coast Critical Role to ever consider ignoring the option of having their. I mean, we know that they're publishing through. I totally agree. I think it only makes sense to have your own rule set, world system, whatever you want to call it.
yeah. And
That they
even
want.
even all the drama with Wizards like aside, like it just makes sense. Like this, they're a company, they're like
Yeah.
an empire at this point. Like why are we gonna make money for this other company? Just like they used to be with Geek and Sundry, they launched that on their own. They're their own
Mhm.
thing. Like let's use our own system and
Yeah.
promote that. So that doesn't necessarily have to tie into the narrative, but it seems like this is a great opportunity for like a cosmological reset that could kind of play into a mechanical reset.
Yeah.
Um, so I think all that stuff's on the table, and I think that the campaign could be shorter, maybe even to lead into campaign 4 that uses the new system instead of to kind of facilitate that transition more quickly instead of like changing systems mid campaign, which I don't think they would do. But maybe they would end this one early in order to go ahead and jump over to that. But so I think that that's possible, but I still think this is going to be like a normal length campaign, and I do think there's enough even just with this story to facilitate that.
Mm. Yeah.
That was a bunch of word salad, but
Oh man.
um, to,
Separate from,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, separate from Lewdness and Lewdness's town, do you see them going back to Silra to get more info on Ashton?
I originally thought that would be happening, but now I'm thinking maybe they can just get more info on that without actually going there, especially if it is like a ghost town and kind of non-existent anyway. Like now Ashton kind of has the pieces of information he needs to maybe go dig that hole a little bit,
Is
and
it
maybe it's not in a seal run necessarily.
is it possible that they come across F. Terran?
Yeah, I don't know. I was wondering if he's dead or not, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I guess it wasn't mentioned, and I was wondering, do you think that's his dad or not necessarily? Because here's what I was confused about, or not confused, but here's what I was thinking: is clearly Efterin was the one, the cult charismatic leader that got all this going, was performing this ritual. Is what happened to Ashton a side effect of the chaos that exploded out, or was Ashton like a central piece of this, and that's why Ashton is transformed in the way he's transformed? Because if it's the
Douchebag
latter, I think it's his dad, but if it's the
Bro.
former,
Oh my gosh, man.
not necessarily.
What an awesome dude. I'm shipping it. I love it.
I don't
We're
know, you know.
we're 0 for 1 on the dog theory, but this is my next big. But we hit the Lud I mean, not totally confirmed, but like Ludinus super old theory, way before
It's true. It's true.
Lesmere, all that stuff. We got that. Or you
We
got
got a
that.
couple of wins under our
Yeah.
belt for
Yeah.
sure. Let
I
us
love
have the dog thing.
Yeah, well, I think it speaks to the tragicness of Ashton of his dad even like in very much oh man, what's the thing from the Bible? Oh, the old story. The guy tries to sacrifice his son to appease
Oh
God.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I just can't remember the names, but point being, I could totally see F. Taryn being his dad and being like, yeah, you're the central piece of this, and which would be so sad.
Yeah. It would be. And I not commenting on whether like Ashton, whether that's the case or not, and even if it is, if Ashton knows that necessarily or not, especially all the like the literal like head trauma that they've been through, it's quite possible that like that could be his dad and he doesn't remember. Um, but it could kind of inform a lot of his worldview as well. Like I think most people kind of hate the cult leader, but Ashton's definitely like doesn't put up with any of that, and so it would kind of inform that a lot if that's because like that's
Mm.
how his dad was, or even if it's not his dad, just like this, you know, cult that his family was a part of, he would have been exposed to it clearly. Um, but yeah, real. It's gonna get delved into, like it has to. So even though it didn't happen here in Asilra, I'm really interested to find out more. I thought it was cool how Abadina was part of it. And very interesting that she didn't, at least didn't lead on to the fact that she knew, like in, um, she recognized. But Ashton is transformed, so I guess it makes sense why she wouldn't recognize him. Um,
Yeah, and he was presumably really young at the time. Also, we
yeah.
don't know how old Ashton is, but presumably pretty young. And but I am surprised she didn't. We know she recognized. I don't know if recognize is the right word. Like, was intrigued by his form.
Hmm.
I'm surprised there wasn't more of like, "Hey, you look kind of like that magic we unleashed 40 years ago."
I wish he would have asked her, because I would have been fascinated to hear what she said about it.
Yeah.
Um, which there was during that episode there was a conversation. I think it was with Laudna where she was like, "Are you going to ask Abadina about the Hishari?" And he was like, "No, like that's for later with you guys once things settle down." Um,
But didn't he ask in some way? And she was like, go speak to the rocks or something.
yes, but I don't think he brought up like the Hishari part of it. I think he was just like
Yeah.
asking like a generalization of like where do you
Yeah.
look for answers or type of something like that. Like I don't think
Yeah.
he explained or used the word Hishari ever. Um,
Mm. Okay. Interesting. On this note, um, has Galdrashari been mentioned aside from Calamity?
that was the first time it was mentioned.
Okay, because I was surprised that it got name dropped. No one was like, wait, what is the Galdrashari?" Which I guess maybe it was a tiny retcon in that Orem seemed like, I guess Orem as an Ashari would know that they were, that those were the ancestors of the Ashari. But I guess I was just surprised. It made me wonder if the Galdrashari had been mentioned otherwise. Which
Mm.
for our listeners, Galdrashari are one of the groups in the Calamity that uh, they come up in Calamity essentially.
Yeah. I think it. I don't. I feel like it maybe what that connection was put together somewhere, but I don't remember where. and maybe I'm just thinking of Calamity, but yeah, I don't think that's necessarily like a big revelation necessarily. Like you mentioned, maybe Orm even would have known that or should have known that. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, speaking of them, I'm wondering, and this even could tie into the ritual that the Hishari were trying to perform. But we know that the Emerald Tree is a Gougersari that like merged with an Eidolon in order to like
Yeah.
continue to live, not really live, but like become like a Fane of power that then, could carry on and help still. I wonder if the Hishari were trying to do something similar, like create their own emerald tree, if you will. But it made me wonder, is this perhaps how the Tree of Names was created? A similar
Mm.
like Gougersari merging with some sort of power,
Yeah.
like a self-sacrifice play to
Yeah.
create that tree. But
So I have a question
yeah.
or something. I like the father guess even more now because I was just curious and I searched F Terran and Critical Role Wiki or fandom said, former leader of the cult of Shari and the presumed father of Ashton Greymore, which I
Hmm.
was like, do they know something I don't? Like, why is it the presumed father? But in the body, they cite episode 34, What Dreams May Come, which is the episode following when Laudna dies, where
Okay.
everyone kind of comes to and they all have their memories that flash.
Right.
And if
Right.
you remember, Ashton has a memory of, and this is so foggy for me, but like a man, his father, weren't they like in a tent or so? I don't remember where they were, but it was kind of like time for the big show. I'm butchering it, but it was like presumably right before.
Yeah.
Am I misremembering this? Isn't that basically what happened?
I think
Or
it's, yeah, something to that effect.
so I that it feels like too strong a link for it not to be the dad, but I guess it could have been just, it could be F. Terran's right hand man, if anything, just being like, all right, time to go support our
Or yeah, or
boss.
like the big rituals happening today.
Yeah, yeah, totally. But I had forgotten about that memory that
Yeah.
had been unlocked for him.
Yeah, that
But
is that is
anyway,
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. It's just really fascinating how all these things are kind of clicking into place with just like the story as a whole, which we don't necessarily know if the Hishari's ideals lined up with like the idol, like Hevestro and Abadina's. But presumably they were Team Primordial, not Team God. So I'm interested to see how these forces of the world end up clashing here between
and it's a
gods.
bit,
Yeah.
and it's been interesting too how Hevestro kind of delegitimized F. Terran because it's interesting that they both we even have the discussion about Abadina coming to Hevestro and getting kind of decultized. I don't know what the
Mhm.
phrasing is.
Yeah.
But they all believe in the primordials,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. So like
it's
what was the
interesting.
Hishari, what were they about? Like what was
Yeah.
so
And why did Hevestra basically describe like their ambition being foolish? Because Aberdeen now clearly still like wants to usher that in. Um, and Hevestro's, you know, demigod, for lack of a better phrase, of Omadua is fused with an Eidolon.
yeah.
So I guess that was a bit awkward. Not awkward, but like there's a disconnect there for me.
Well, yeah, clearly the Hishari were on some other stuff. Like
Yeah.
so it's just curious what the specifics of
It's
that
like,
were.
so sorry to offend anyone, but as a Christian, it's like Christian and then like the way out there Christian. Where you're just like, did you have to interview that person for this story? Or so maybe it's something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, fanatic fanaticism in some form. And clearly, I mean, I don't think having a presumable humanoid, maybe elf, half elf, who knows, whatever Ashton originally was, turning into an Earth Genasi is probably not like a normal thing. Like, so they were like dabbling in some weirdness,
Yeah.
whatever their hopeful outcome
Yeah.
was. Which maybe it was something like that. Maybe it was like we all want to turn into primordials ourself or something, you know.
Mhm.
But
Man, I
yeah,
just want this campaign animated so freaking badly. It makes me so sad to feel like it's years away.
I mean, I feel like it's gonna happen. It is, undoubtedly probably some years away, but I think, I mean, unless something weird happens, they go bankrupt or something, like, and the Mighty Nine campaign like does terribly or something, like, I surely they're gonna animate this.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then one quick thought. I mean, if Keela's still alive, which I she is, I hope. I wonder if one day when her very, very, very long life might be coming to an end, if she might merge, and create a Fane of Power with her essence.
Mm.
Um, since that's seemingly a thing archdruids do. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, she's it has they age very slowly. Plus, she's a half elf, so she like is gonna live for a really long time. So this wouldn't
Yeah.
be something that happens in campaign 3, or, or 4 or 5 or whatever, unless there's a time jump. But still, I just had that thought when we found this out. Um, and then one other thing that I don't really have much to say on it, but be remiss if I didn't mention it at all, was just this Evethorier Oma Dua kind of
Yeah.
rivalry. This is not a name that we've heard before, but just really cool, like archfey that's like shadow incarnate. And it's another cool like example, I guess, or instance rather, of the Apogee Solstice freeing, something that
Yes.
was locked away. Um, which we spoke about like the state of the world, and specifically like Drusar, like what's happened there. I'm curious what other entities that were locked away, similar to this thing and similar to the Umadara beast, that are currently out there like doing their thing after being imprisoned for who knows how long. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, like I
Yeah.
said, don't have much to say on it, but
And could it be the last we see of Evitharir? Um, Such a cool character, so to speak. Nice, really nice flavor. Um, isn't it with if a Fae dies in the planar world, it goes back to the Feywild? Or am I misremembering?
I don't know. I feel like there is something like that,
Okay.
but I don't know how it works.
Yeah, okay. I'm just
Uh,
curious if it's the last we see of it.
I mean, and maybe it's not like, maybe the Evethorier that we saw is not like 100%, you know, 100% power. Like maybe it's because he's been in prison for so long. Maybe it's a weakened form. But I would have to imagine that like something that they had to like lock away, you would
You can't.
think is not just so easily killed by this level 9 party or whatever. So I don't think narratively it necessarily like makes sense to see him again, but I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't dead.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll see the party at level 10 also, by the way.
I bet so. If maybe not like when we see them next, but like maybe at the end of the next episode, because
Yeah.
they haven't leveled up during the split, have they?
Right. I don't think so.
So yeah, I surely, right, surely level 10's coming.
Yeah.
um and it would be cool if, even, how they put out the little like roll for HP videos, like they put one of those out before this next episode. Be a nice little
Yeah.
tease.
Yeah.
um,
Whew, man. All right.
did you say something?
I said, yeah. Anything else?
Oh yeah, your mic must have cut out because I just heard you go all right, and then it was and I was like, yeah.
Yeah. I was looking at my notes. Yeah. Anything else?
Let me just look. I don't think so. Let me just quickly glance at the notes. Um this is something we already talked about, but it's one thing I forgot to bring up in the conversation, was the potential path to like a non-violent end for Bordor. One thing I thought was interesting was he was a divine soul. Is that what it is? Divine soul sorcerer. I don't know if that's the proper name, but you guys know what I'm talking about. For that type of
Yeah, fine soul.
sorcerer, um, I thought it was interesting that he still had his powers. You know, like one, it's a divine source of magic, which we've seen with Deanna, we've seen with other people. Like their magic isn't gone, but for him to have like forsaken the gods and be actively against them, he
Right.
still was able to channel the Wild Mother's power. So I think this is something that like wasn't actually like looked into as far as like this would be like a really cool element to the character story. Um, but nonetheless, if I'm allowed to insight into that, I feel like that was like a glimmer of the redemption path there. Like the Wild Mother still believed in Bordor, you know. So like
Wait.
maybe there was a way back. Which
Yeah.
also, again, to give some context, I've been rewatching these episodes to get clips and stuff for a video. There's the moment with Orem digging his sword into the ground and praying to the Wild Mother that night. Uh, After he does that, Bordor and I think everyone is basically still awake. But so like Bordor and some other people like you're like yeah Matt's like yeah you saw him do that. Bordor's like freaking idiot under his breath, which I thought was really interesting now in hindsight. Like especially
Mm.
because it is the Wild Mother.
Nice little insight.
Yeah, it's a nice little moment. Um,
I like the whole path to redemption. I know Utkarsh said that like I was gonna kill you guys no
yeah,
matter what.
like it wasn't gonna happen, but like just in terms of
No,
like because like I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Like the guests
think
were
about it.
leaving, but
He did mass cure wounds, everybody.
yeah, like yeah,
So there's a part of him deep down that, you know, is still that scared kid running out of town, you know? I don't know.
for sure. And the pipe smoking moment, which it's probably not fair to say either way what this means because it could just be 'cause we talked about this last episode when he took the pipe and Matt was like, you know what that does, right? Which now in hindsight, I think it is an indication of Matt was like, this might reveal your secret, and but maybe Matt just let it go. But Bordor, you know, his vision was of everyone cheering him on, which my head canon for that is that that really was his best moment and like he like this is the first time in his life that he like felt included and like accepted. Um, but maybe he was just still putting on an act, and Matt just didn't punish him for breaking what the item was supposed to do. But I like to think it was the other way, and
Mhm.
path to redemption.
Well, he's dead, so we'll never know.
Yeah, that'll throw a wrench in things for sure.
Whew. Man, what an episode to discuss. It's yeah, I guess I need a week off to decompress from
Yeah,
this episode, but presumably a pretty awesome return to normalcy, I guess. We'll see this a week from tomorrow for next week's episode. Let us know what you guys thought about the episode. What are your thoughts on Bordor, the big reveal, and what do you expect moving forward? So, Will, my friend, little thumbnail action.
yeah. What do you think? I know you were having some ideas for a vision. So what do you think?
I was thinking kind of like not even so much like a look of surprise, but just like a I don't yeah, a look of surprise, really, honestly. Like
Okay,
we just jumped right into that one.
we're we're freaking pros at this point, man.
So don't forget, guys, we're on Twitter. Join our Discord. We're on TikTok. We have the podcast if you want to just listen to us instead of watch us. We're everywhere. You can check us out.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate the likes, the follows, whatever social media we're talking about. Appreciate the engagement.
mm.
Um, so yeah.
All right.
All right.
Catch you guys later.
Bye, y'all.